Drawing customers in. You're lucky you work here. You have captive audience.
If I was to say the word king, most often the first thought that would come to mind is knights, castles, and odd medieval clothing. According to an article by Richard Green, 43 countries still have a monarch. Queen Elizabeth II is figurehead of 16 of these countries, including Canada. I've always found monarchs interesting and done quite a bit of research on them. In preparation for this speech, I did research on all of the world's monarchs, and I'm going to show you why monarchies are outdated and need to be abolished. Now you might be wondering why this speech pertains to you. Well, America fought a revolution in order to be free from monarchical rule, and it's about time that all the countries of the world are able to do so as well. In this, we'll be talking about the history of monarchies, the British Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, what the British royal family cost the taxpayer, and the country with the largest country with an absolute monarch, Saudi Arabia. In order to have a better understanding of the monarchy as a whole, let's start out and learn about the history. People tend to think of monarchs as medieval kings, and if they try to think back to the first monarch, they usually think of ancient Greece or Rome. But in order to find the first ever monarch, you need to go back to ancient Egypt, to the rule of Pharaoh Nimir. Nimir took power in 3150 BC. To put that in perspective, Rome was founded in 753 BC, which is 2,397 years after Nimir took power. And the first Norman king of England, William the Conqueror, took power in 1066 AD. Historian Scott Peters said that Nimir is credited with uniting Upper and Lower Egypt into one peaceful kingdom and starting one of the world's most powerful countries even today. Most people think of monarchs as coming from England or France, but in a historical timeline they are actually relatively new, with France being the first, then known as the Kingdom of Franks, having a first king in 460 AD. And to put that in perspective, that is almost 1,000 years after the founding of Rome. Now, history shows that these monarchs could rule effectively and progress our countries to where they are today. But most of these countries that still have these monarchs are nothing more than just figureheads. One of the most popular ones is Queen Elizabeth II. Most everybody knows who she is, but what people don't actually know is that she has no real power, and she's essentially just another celebrity. England's absolute monarchy ended in 1215 with the signing of the Magna Carta, and this started an English Parliament, which is somewhat similar to America's Congress. Now, the kings in England tended to have a decent amount of power until 1688, when the Glorious Revolution took place. And that's actually described by historian C.N. Truman, when he said that this ended the reign of James II and had established a constitution for England. So, if the Queen has no power, what does she do? James Rogers of the Birmingham Mail explains the Queen's day-to-day activities. In short, in the morning she writes letters and replies to citizens. In the afternoon she visits cities and then charities. And the only time that she actually has any say in any political power is on Wednesday evenings when she meets with the British Prime Minister. When they meet, they discuss what happened in Parliament the week before. Now, the Queen can voice her opinion about what she thinks is right, wrong, but she has no power to veto Parliament in any way. So if the Queen has no power, what essentially does the British taxpayer pay for? It's no denying that the British royal family has a lot of money. Their wealth is made up of land, art, and personal investments. Laura Woods, a reporter, describes the royal family worth as a whole as well as the Queen herself. She states that the royal family is worth $755 million, with the Queen making up $550 million of that total. Now, the Queen having a lot of money isn't that big of a deal, but what the deal is she actually gets a salary off of British taxes. She gets a salary of $59.7 million a year from taxes alone, and this is reported by Gordon Rayner of the Telegraph. She has been in power now for 65 years, the history's longest ruling monarch. And her salary is not the only concern for Graham Smith of the UK Times. He states that British taxes also go to the security of the royal family, their lost income from property assets, and costs also determined from local government. Now this comes out to $393 million a year. That's more than England spends on cancer research, food for their military, and their national flood defense. With that money, England could hire 14,000 more teachers or 15,000 more police officers. Now, getting rid of the monarchy in a country where the monarch has no real power is a no-brainer. But what about a country with an absolute monarch? How well does that country stack up against other countries of the world? The largest country that has an absolute monarch is Saudi Arabia. In an article by U.S. News ranking the best countries, Saudi Arabia ranked 32nd out of 80. That's not very bad until you look at the categories. Saudi Arabia's middle of the pack ranking comes from their wealth from their vast oil reserves. Other than that, they rank rather low in other categories, one of those being citizenship. U.S. News describes this category as how progressive a country is, trustworthiness of its ruler, religious freedom, well-distributed political power, and cares about human rights. In this category, Saudi Arabia ranks 60 out of 80. Without their money, Saudi Arabia would be ranked in the mid-60s. Low rankings like these are typical of countries with absolute monarchy, proving that monarchies are an outdated form of government. In conclusion, monarchies are outdated because they waste taxpayer money on a figurehead. They could be used elsewhere for the betterment of a country. And statistics also show that these monarchies are not good forms of government for the citizens themselves. It's time to abolish the monarchy worldwide because they waste money and do nothing to better a country. There are much better forms of government to choose from.